Well, good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Bill.
We're here this morning. The fall is in the air.
Chilly.
It's chilly. I bet it's not chilly for three people that won the Nobel Prize in Economics.
They're all up north. It's maybe a little chilly up there too. I don't know, but something keeping them warm, I suspect.
I imagine that money, Swiss krona,
Yeah.
keeps them warm.
Well, last time we were going to talk a little bit about the Nobel Prize in Economics, so we didn't get around to it. So, what do you think about that? I mean, you've got two guys that essentially have pretty significantly opposing views. Fama saying that we have efficient markets and that you really don't need regulation because the markets are always self-correcting, and then Shiller, who basically has said, no, we've got a lot of problems, people aren't perfect, they did make a lot of mistakes, and as a result markets get out of whack.
The irrational exuberance concept.
Right, yeah, and then you've got Lars Hansen sort of in the middle who said, well, I don't, here are the tools to figure all this out. So
the Nobel Committee was just diplomatic and said, let's give it to all three of them.
Yeah, either that or they were having a big laugh.
So let's talk about first Fama's position on efficient markets and what that means to the mortgage market. Really, there are three forms of efficient markets. First is called the weak form of his efficient market hypothesis, and that says essentially that basically you can't take past public information, historical information, and predict the future.
Right.
So when markets start to run in a certain way, there's no necessarily correlation that tomorrow they'll be like they were yesterday.
Exactly.
So that's the first set, and that's largely been validated. It is weak form efficient. I mean, there are a few violations of that, but in general.
Yeah.
The second form of efficiency is called semi-strong efficiency, and that essentially says that you can't take public available information and beat the market. In other words, if you had a trading strategy based on publicly available information, then you would do no better than a buy and hold. All right. And the third form is the strong form that says you can't take any information, including private information, like what a specialist had or what an insider had, and beat the market. And we know that's not true.
No, that's not true.
That's why we have insider trading laws. So if you have inside information, you can trade inside the bid-ask spread, and as a result, achieve superior returns.
Right.
So that's Fama's work and his contribution. And along comes Shiller, and he says that's all fine and good, but you know what? When markets go in one direction, they go way in one direction.
Right. And and basically even the weak form there says that you've got a problem, because if you do what you did yesterday, or you take the market and see that there's a big trend and you assume that that trend's going to continue, at least for a while, you do pretty well.
Exactly. Well, you just have to know when to get out, when the music stops. And the problem is people get addicted to the music.
Exactly.
All right, and they don't know when it's going to stop, and so as a result, they don't get out.
So
Can you tell I'm a little horse in the ball game? Ole Miss Rebels had a big win this weekend. They beat LSU, the 6th ranked team in the country. Couldn't have a nicer bunch of people. so just a little tidbit for our viewers out there.
Well, we had some clients there. They were all excited about it. Everybody gets excited. It was a big game,
It was very, very. We had a group, or we say in Mississippi a bunch. We had a bunch of clients in town. It was all good. They're taking credit for the victory.
But that's okay. As they should.
Exactly. So I'm sure a lot of people are taking credit for helping Fama, Hansen, and Shiller win the Nobel Prize too.
Well, they all worked with it. They co-authors. I mean, Fama's work came out of his PhD dissertation, and sometimes you have an advisor that helps along those lines, and Shiller did a lot of work with other people, as did Hansen. So, I mean, these things, they just have to single out a person or two people or three in some cases that are really the one that's sort of the key to this. And I think Shiller's book, Irrational Exuberance, which came out, I think, the same month as the first big collapse of the market based upon the tech bubble.
In 01.
Right.
It was about 01.
2000, 2001, somewhere
Right.
in there. I think his book came out the month before it crashed, and so
Great timing.
it seemed, he got a lot of attention with that.
I wonder if there's been any research done on the success of the timing of the release of certain books.
No, I bet there has been. But anyway,
The Nobel Prize in Literature.
Yeah, there you go. Well, in any case, it was they've done some interesting work. Hansen, I think, is kind of interesting in all the articles about the Nobel Prize. Hansen sort of gets excluded a lot of times because, first of all, no one really understands the statistical modeling that he did, the generalized method of moments. It's sort of over everyone's head, you know. But and then you have the two extremes. You have the Schiller on one hand and Baum on the other hand in terms of their views of how the markets work. But I think people generally would recognize that a market's, while generally fairly efficient, you know, particularly a market with lots of transactions, a lot of information about the trades. While they're generally very efficient, they do get out of whack, and that's why you need regulation.
And they get carried away at the extremes.
Right.
Right. I mean, some of the points that Schiller brings out is they basically, to paraphrase, they get carried away at the extremes.
Right.
And so we need regulation, especially at the extremes.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw that in the real estate market. I mean, there was no question that people were making irrational choices in terms of the houses that they were doing, the refinancing that was going on.
It was an asset-dependent loan.
Yeah.
The borrower had no way to repay based on cash flow.
Exactly.
The asset had to go up in value.
Right, and so there were a lot of crazy decisions being made, but people just got carried away in that. And so that's, I think, a validation of that.
And they've done that for a long, long time, going back to the tulip bulb.
Oh, yeah. You know, Fama still rejects that. He still feels that the markets are very efficient, and the only problem is that we don't properly price the risk, and that's his explanation of that. So, that happens a lot. You see that all the time. People get hung up on a particular theory that has done well for them, and they're very reluctant to let it go. You see it not only in economics, but in all the sciences.
Well, you see it in businesses. They make money in a given area, and
right.
the world changes, and they're slow to change. That's Christensen's book, Clayton Christensen's book,
Right,
The Innovator's
right,
Dilemma.
right.
And so we see in the mortgage. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's bring this home to the mortgage finance area, and that is, we've been hooked on low interest rates. We've gotten very hooked on refinancing. Refinancing is the mortgage loan officer's cocaine. I mean, it is their drug. And rates go down, they just make a ton of money from origination. They get hooked on that.
Well, and you know, people have fairly good memories of the way things were just 10 or so years ago, and you're seeing that now that the interest rates are starting to climb a little bit and the refis are gone, they start to remember, well, how did we make all that money back then?
Exactly. and so people want to get back in. They want that cash machine to turn back on.
Yeah, and so they start thinking, well, you know, we had all these really cool loan products that, liar loans and all these things. Maybe we ought to bring those back.
We see our customers bringing out new loan products. And we are beginning to see some of the underwriting standards slip a little.
Right. Well, I was in, I forget which city the other day, and I saw these ads on TV saying that, implying that the loans that were available now did not depend so much on credit anymore. And so, yeah, the underwriting standards are sliding down a little bit.
Well, speaking of anomalies, I do have, as we wrap up today's discussion on our Nobel Prize winners, I do have one solid question to pose to you, Dr. Dorsey, the economist, and that is this: why, increasingly, is the Nobel Prize in economics going to finance people?
Well, they have to occasionally make a bow to those people that are working in specialized economics.
I got you. Well, this is FNC's Morning View. I'm Bill Ray with Bob Dorsey. You all have a fantastic week. Bye-bye.